And this week was a bad one for babies hoping to catch up on Game of Thrones.
No screen time for babies and only 1 hour for kids under 5. That is a recommendation from the World Health Organization. It just issued its first ever guidance for how much screen time children under 5 should get.
No screen time for babies. Oh, I totally agree. I'd never put a baby in front of a screen unless it was being annoying and I had some errands to run. Anyway, don't worry about that baby. It wasn't a good baby. That baby's gone. Yes, we begin our lives staring at screens and it only gets worse from there. Nowadays, our reliance on devices has become a full-blown addiction.
Technology has an impact on memory, concentration, mood, so anxiety and depression. It has an impact on sleep, has an impact on overall well-being.
That sounds like an addiction to me, though they left out the part where you're always the last one at the Genius Bar offering blowies for more data. I don't suck them off for the data. I suck them off because they're geniuses. Over 76% of Americans say they're addicted to their phones. Amazing that so many people would admit to that. I'm not addicted to my phone. I'm addicted to what's on my phone. It's the porn that I'm obsessed with. The phone is just the porn facilitator. Like, people are addicted to drugs. Nobody's addicted to spoons and belts. No one goes to Bottleaholics Anonymous. I shouldn't say no one. Maybe there's someone who's addicted to making that toot-toot train noise with the empty bottles. But it shouldn't be surprising that there are so many phone addicts. Apps are designed to be addictive. That's why they're constantly rewarding us with likes and streaks and positive notifications. It's called gamification, and it's turning us all into lab rats.
We use AI and neuroscience to help apps become more engaging and persuasive.
In other words, more addictive.
So this is what our AI is figuring out, how to personalize for every person uniquely, whether that's the extra 10 points, the good job, the high five, the congrats.
Have you noticed how everything we do now is a game? We won't exercise unless there's a little badge. Meditation apps like Calm share your daily streaks and notifications, reminding you to breathe. Because nothing relaxes me more than a robot telling me to breathe. Some apps assume you won't be able to even do basic chores unless you can pretend to be a fairy tale character or an action hero while you do them. Is it just me, or is that commercial a little racist? I mean, of course the Asian woman doesn't want to fold laundry. She's probably exhausted from doing it all day at the dry cleaners, I assume she owns. Of course, that's a stereotype. She may work in a nail salon. Who wants to play a game based around chores? It turns out a lot of people.
You've helped make changes to my diet, exercise a lot more, and I haven't forgotten to take out the trash for months.
What a sad-ass man living in that tiny screen. You need a bigger computer, you dick. Wait, what does he need, a video to remind him to take out the trash? The piled-up trash doesn't remind you to take out the trash. Like how I have an app on my phone that reminds me to take my pants off before I shit myself. I just lost 10 points. Companies also use gamification to push their employees to work harder. Target started up a game to track their checkout clerks. Amazon warehouse workers are given points on a scoreboard and they can be fired if they score poorly. And at the Apple factory, they're using an incentive called work hard for a bowl of rice and an iPod shuffle with no headphones. We're so accustomed to everything being a game, it's hard to recognise when companies are using it against us.
Part of Bunchball's effectiveness is the result of using gamification. Data is sent to Bunchball, which then provides real-time data and data-driven achievement feedback and recognition to let your people know they're on the right track or what they need to do to course correct.
Let me get this straight. A f***ing ball is collecting data on how little work I do. Then it tells my boss, and that's supposed to be fun. Imagine trying to explain this to your child. All right, son, it's very important to work hard because otherwise a video game ball will snitch on you and you'll get fired. That's why Daddy's home all day, because a ball told on me. I'm a grown man, Billy. What happened to doing things just because you have to f***ing do them? Gamification will never change the fact that some things just suck. If it has an app, you know it's a shit activity. Fun things don't have apps. F***ing doesn't need an app. Now, meeting people to that needs an app because meeting people is horrible. Chores will always suck. Calling it a game doesn't make it a game. In the same way that just calling something a joke doesn't make it a joke. I'll show you. What do you get when you cross a pelican and a rhino? Suck my dick. Oh, actually, that's got a laugh. That's not a bad joke. Hey, maybe it's my best joke. Sounds like good material for my next comedy special. Maybe one day we can all put down our phones and go back to doing things for the sake of doing them. Because it's pretty sad that we're all so simple-minded that we'll allow ourselves to be manipulated just for a dumb gold star. Ah! Oh! Ah, that's the good at words coin. I get one of those when I go a whole 100 words without messing up. I'm almost a Trenty Crons. Ah! We'll be root dick.